What's going on, party people? It's your friendly neighborhood youth pastor, and we're in a series called Atypical. It's all about families. This is part one of a two-part video with the title, Not So Typical Families Have Tough Conversations. You ready? Here we go. So back in the day, my sister and I used to fight over this converter all the time. Because we didn't have our own phones, we didn't have our own iPads, we didn't have our own laptops, our own TVs. It was one TV in the house. So whoever had this had control of what TV we could watch. This is obviously when my parents were gone. So we were always fighting over that. So that's one tough conversation that used to happen in my family growing up. When I got a little bit older, I got married, and then I had another tough conversation. So one time my wife confronted me and said that I had a problem with anger. So I ended up having to go to counseling to really deal with that. But let me tell you, that was a tough conversation. I was angry. But what about you? Do you have tough conversations in your family? Is your family atypical? We've been saying for the last couple of videos that your atypical family could be even more atypical. Like we've been saying, no family's perfect. And because no family's perfect, every family occasionally has to have a tough conversation. And maybe those conversations happen because of difference of opinion, an unwise choice that someone made, some hurt feelings, or a misunderstanding that needs to be addressed. Typical families, they either avoid these conversations or they have them, but they don't have them very well. Atypical families, on the other hand, approach these conflicts and these confrontations very differently. For the last couple of videos, we've been saying that atypical families can be used by God in a very amazing way. So you want to know how? Let's do it. Last time we talked about how atypical families pray for each other when there's conflict. This time around, we're going to talk about another thing that families can do. So far in this series, we've seen Adam and Eve, the very first family, and then we've also seen Abraham. And you know from these two families that they were both very atypical and imperfect in their own ways. They had disobedience to God, lies, murder, conflict, and disagreements. So these families were far from perfect. Today I'm going to introduce you to another family. This is the family of Isaac and Rebekah and their sons Esau and Jacob. So again, this was Abraham's grandsons, but their story isn't the story of brotherly love. It's also an imperfect relationship from the start. I'm going to be looking at Genesis 25, 21 to 24, and 27, 1 to 45. I'm not going to read it. I'm going to summarize it for you. All right, so something you need to know off the bat is that Esau's the older son, and as the older son, he had what's called the birthright and the blessing. So the birthright means he's going to get 2/3 of the inheritance when his father passes away. He's the one responsible for carrying the name on, and then he also is going to get a blessing around that. So very prestigious to be the firstborn. So there's already that kind of dynamic in the family. So Isaac loved his son Esau more than Jacob. And then the wife, Isaac's wife, loved Jacob, the younger son, better. So there's already that dynamic. So Esau's a hairy guy, he goes out hunting, and Jacob is a mama's boy, kind of stays home, smooth-skinned guy. You'll see why that's important later. So one day Jacob's at home, he's making some stew, and then Esau's out hunting, comes home, so hungry. He's like, yo, I'm so hungry I could die. Give me some of that stew. And Jacob's like, I'll give you that stew if you give me your birthright. So Esau's like, yo, what do I need a birthright for if I'm going to die? Just give me some of the stew, man. So he gives him the stew and he takes his birthright. All right. So Jacob's name literally means deceiver. So he's deceived his older brother out of the birthright. That's already one piece of crazy family dynamics. Check out the second story. So we skip ahead. Isaac is old. He's about to die. He's blind. He can't see. And he wants to bless his son, Esau, the older son. He wants to give him the blessing, right? So he goes, go out to the field, kill an animal, bring it home, cook it for me, and then I'm going to lay my hands on you and I'm going to bless you. So then as soon as he leaves, Jacob's mom says, yo, I'm going to cook some food. I want you to bring it into your dad and I want you to take the blessing that he's going to give you. Jacob's like, yo, I can't do that. If dad finds out that I'm trying to trick him, not only am I not going to get the blessing, he's probably going to like curse me or something. Plus, I'm smooth skinned and Esau's hairy. Like it's just not going to work. And the mom's like, no, don't worry, it's going to work. So the mom cooks the meal. The mom cuts up the animal, puts the skin of the animal on Jacob, so Jacob's going to feel hairy. This is the level of deceit that's going on in this family. So then you have Jacob going into the dad who's blind, and he's, the dad's like, oh, is that you, my son Esau? He's like, yeah, it's me. He's like, okay, how'd you get the food so quickly? He's like, oh, your God prepared it for me, Thanks, peace out. Right? So then he brings him the food, and he starts to eat it. He's like, oh, it's delicious. Then he's like, okay, come closer so I can bless you. He comes closer, and he's like, the voice sounds like Jacob, but he feels him. He's like, oh, it's hairy. It feels hairy just like Esau. So he starts to bless him. He blesses him, and then as soon as he finished blessing him, Jacob leaves, and then as soon as he leaves, Esau comes in. He's like, yo, Dad, I got the food. Give me my blessing. The dad's like, yo, who this? Esau's like, yo, it's me, man. It's your son. And then Isaac's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just gave away a blessing. I just blessed somebody. Who was that? And then Esau's like, no wonder they call that guy Jacob. He deceived me these 2 times. The first time he took my blessing. Now he's taking my birthright. He's taking everything. Oh, he's so mad. He's like, don't you have a blessing for me? Isaac's like, nah, guy. I'm all out of blessings, man. Sorry. So then, obviously Esau's super mad. Like, look how dysfunctional this family. So Esau's super mad, and then Esau, when someone gets so mad they get quiet? So he's like quiet, and he's like, okay, all right, well, my dad's about to die. When he dies, and after we cry over his funeral, I'll just kill Jacob. So obviously the mom hears about this and is like, yo, Jacob, you better bounce because Esau's planning to kill you. So you want to talk about an atypical family? You want to talk about a family that has lies and deceits and all this kind of stuff? This is this family. Can you imagine being a part of that family? That's a lot of pain. That's a lot of deceit. That's a lot of cruelty for one family. But that's not the end of Jacob and Esau's story. Years later, Jacob is married and he has children of his own, but he hasn't spoken to Esau since that day. He went away, he moved to a different city, and now years later, he's going to return home. Knowing that Esau has every reason to hate him and maybe even kill him, Jacob sends some messengers ahead to kind of feel out the situation and see how it's going to go. Now, I've had some tough conversations with my family, as I shared before, but nothing like this conversation that Jacob and Esau are about to have. Jacob knows that he kind of needs to make things right, so he sends some gifts and stuff like that. But what about Esau? Like, what would Esau be thinking? When conflict happens, sometimes you're too stubborn, you're too angry, you're too ashamed, you're too afraid to have a tough conversation with your family, and then that leaves room for ugly things to grow. After years of silence, Esau might hate Jacob. He might even want him dead. But check out what happens. Hey, where'd I get this Bible from? So we're going to look at Genesis chapter 33, 4 to 12. Genesis chapter 33, 4 to 12. Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant." Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all, Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met?" "To find favor in your eyes, my lord," he said. But Esau said, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob. "If I found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God now that you have received me favorably. Please accept this present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all that I need." And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. Then Esau said, "Let us be on our way. I'll accompany you." Amazingly, Esau didn't let years of separation from his brother fill him with hatred and anger. Instead, he wanted to have a relationship with Jacob again. But it could have gone very differently. Like, it makes sense that Jacob was afraid to meet with Esau. He was probably ashamed to admit the wrong that he did. He probably was also scared that Esau might retaliate. Esau could have screamed at him, could have attacked him, could have even killed him. That would have been understandable. After all, Jacob took his birthright and his blessing. But against all of these odds, Esau didn't show up to kill Jacob. He showed up with open arms, ready to have a conversation. Esau's willingness to have this conversation with Jacob, even after what Jacob did to him, is pretty amazing. And it's absolutely essential to healing in their relationship. Our main point for today is that not so typical families have tough conversations. Not so typical families have tough conversations. In our next video, we're going to look at Jesus and how Jesus told us to handle conflicts. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. See you next time.